There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or medication. It's because you were late, Mr. President. That's why. You were late. Thank you very much, all the honorable members. Order, 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 honorable members.
Honourable Speaker, may I address you on a point of medication?
What is the point of medication, honorable? Thank you very much, honorable members. Honorable members, in the interest of safety for all present in the chamber, please keep your masks on and sit in your designated areas. I thank you. The only item on today's order paper is questions addressed to the President. There are 4 supplementary questions on each question. Parties have given an indication of which questions their members wish to pose a supplementary question on. Adequate notice was given to parties for this purpose. This was done to facilitate participation of members who are connecting to the sitting through the virtual platform. The members who will pose supplementary questions will be recognized by the presiding officer. In allocating opportunities for supplementary questions, the principle of fairness, among others, has been applied. If a member who is supposed to ask a supplementary question through the virtual platform is unable to do so due to technological difficulties, the party whip on duty will be allowed to ask the question on behalf of their member. When all the supplementary questions have been answered by the President, we will proceed to the next question on the question paper. Members asking supplementary questions or raising points of order may remain seated when doing so. The first question has been asked by the Honorable T.N. Mutle. The Honorable, the President.
Oh, sorry. Honorable Speaker, my apologies. I forgot to take my medication this morning. So if I seem a bit slow, just blame it on my forgetfulness to take my medication. The conflict in Ukraine is a matter of global concern to many citizens of various countries. The international community needs to work together to achieve a cessation of hostilities and to prevent further loss of life and displacement of the citizens, of civilians of Ukraine. It needs to support meaningful dialogue towards a lasting and meaningful peace, which ensures the security and stability of all nations. As a country, we are committed to the articles of the United Nations Charter, including the principle that all members shall settle their international disputes by peaceful means. We support the principle that members should refrain from the threat of use of force against the territorial and political independence of other states. That is why at the United Nations General Assembly Emergency Special Session South Africa strongly urged all sides to uphold international law, including humanitarian law and human rights law, and as well as the principles of the UN Charter, including sovereignty as well. While there are people within our country and elsewhere that want South Africa to adopt a more adversarial position, our position seeks to contribute to the creation of conditions that make the achievement of a durable resolution of the conflict possible. Through this approach, we are able to make our voice heard, not only publicly, but also to the parties that are involved in the conflict. And by doing so, as we talk to them, as we exchange views and interact with them, we bring our influence to bear on the issue of dialogue, mediation, and negotiation, which has always stood us in good stead as a nation. Our approach is informed by an analysis also of the causes of the conflict. This includes a view shared by many, both leading scholars, politicians, and you name a number of other people, on international relations, that the war could have been avoided if NATO had heeded the warnings from amongst its own leaders and officials over the years that its eastward expansion would lead to greater, not less, instability in the region. This was also based on agreements that had been arrived at in the past amongst various parties. While it is important to understand and articulate the causes of the conflict and advocate for peace-building measures, we cannot, however, condone the use of force or violation of international law. We also need to recognize that coercive measures such as sanctions outside the legal prescripts of the United Nations may serve to prolong and intensify the conflict. Like other countries, South Africa is concerned about the direct impact of the conflict on our own economy through financial markets and inflationary pressures that will come about through food price increases and fuel price increases as well. As a small and open economy with significant debt levels, one of the most significant steps that we can take to reduce our vulnerability to external shocks is to improve our macroeconomic stability. We have many strengths, even as a small economy country. We have strengths such as a highly developed and well-capitalized financial and banking sector that adheres to internationally recognized frameworks. The depth of local capital markets reduces our vulnerability to foreign currency denominated debt. We benefit from having an independent central bank, a floating exchange rate regime, and prudent capital controls. These strengths will be complemented by the work underway to stabilize debt and to reduce our deficits, alongside the far-reaching structural reforms that are now underway. In short, the best way to protect our economy and welfare of our people is to proceed with the implementation of the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. The conflict in Ukraine demonstrates the need for a multilateral approach to issues of peace and security. It also demonstrates the weaknesses in the structure and practices and the architecture of the United Nations. The composition of the UN Security Council in particular does not reflect the realities of the prevailing global landscape. That a continent of 1.3 billion people does not have a significant voice in the United Nations Security Council is something of great concern to the citizens of this continent. There is a tendency for the most powerful countries to use their positions as permanent UN Security Council members to serve their national interests rather than the interests of global peace and stability. The Security Council needs to be overhauled so that there is equitable representation and a more inclusive mechanism for resolving international disputes. We should also work to revitalize the non-aligned movement to ensure that those countries that are not part of the hegemonic contest between the big powers can work together to build peace across the globe. We align ourselves with the calls led by the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, for de-escalation, dialogue, and the return to diplomacy. Additionally, the Secretary General has called for an immediate ceasefire, the respect for the UN Charter and international law, and adherence to existing peace mechanisms, including the implementation of the Minsk agreements as part of multilateral efforts to end the violence. South Africa stands ready to support genuine multilateral efforts to end the conflict and achieve a lasting peace in the region. Honorable Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable T.N. Mutle through the virtual platform.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you to the Honorable President for the response. In light of your response, Honorable President, it will seem that the system of veto rights of the United Nations Security Council is constraining system of veto, constraining the United Nations ability to resolve international disputes. And this therefore gives space to military allies such as NATO to assume the responsibility of resolving international dispute. What does this observation say in regard to the ability of the United Nations to be central and lead the resolution of international conflict, to perceive international peace and security? This, Mr. President, it's a gap that we have identified, and what will be the observation in that regard so that we don't allow those that are privileged like NATO's to take responsibility that should be taken by the United Nations? I thank you.
Thank
Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. One of the reasons why the United Nations was set up was to ensure that there is peace and stability and avoidance of conflicts in the world. And the Security Council, in the way that it was put together, was supposed to engender the building of peace around the world, but its architecture, as I've said, which excludes other voices, much as they participate on a non-permanent basis, their voices, whilst present, do not have the same weight and impact as those of the permanent members. And that is why we are saying, particularly our continent, is continuing to urge that the United Nations Security Council should be reformed, and other countries should be enabled to participate And we're not only talking about the African continent, there are quite a number of other countries around the world which would be able to bring their voices to the table so that the views on the Security Council are properly weighed up, and it leads to a consideration of different perspectives, different views. And if that were to happen, I believe that the UN Security Council would be able to be a much better structure of the UN, to be able to ensure that there is peace and stability in the world, and bringing together many other voices, like, for instance, the African continent, which has never really enjoyed a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council. We think we have a role to play, and we can add a great deal of value in the building of peace in the world. And therefore, it is for this reason that we say the absence of other countries on the UN Security Council as permanent members weakens the peace efforts of the United Nations. And that is why we continue to insist that it should be reformed. Had the United Nations Security Council been reformed, we believe that we would have been in a much, much stronger position to ensure that conflicts such as these are avoided and they are actively managed and peace is brought about. So it is important that the UN Security Council should be reformed. Now we've got even more evidence to advocate for the reform of the United Nations Security Council. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable M. Hlengwa.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, one of the greatest tragedies, of course, in any country outlook is policy inconsistency or policy uncertainty. And therefore, Mr. President, today I think you have moved an inch closer to helping us understand the very confused government, South African government outlook on this matter, and that there have been many contradictions characterizing our response to the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. But Mr. President, let me put this to you. Does the South African government find it justifiable that Russia invaded Ukraine? And is the president prepared to move away from the euphemistic terminology of calling this a conflict or a military operation and actually call it what it is so that we can be able to mete out a correct response to what is actually happening right now? And as you have called it correctly, Mr. President, a war. But the policy consistency is required, and you need to call it what it is. So we need to know clearly today, what is the South African government's thinking, and what are you calling what is actually going on right now? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable the President.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. If Honorable Hlengwa was listening very carefully to what I said earlier, right at the beginning, he would have been able to have had an answer to what I said. Our position is very clear. And I did say that there are those who are insisting that we should take a very adversarial stance and position against, say, Russia. And the approach that we have chosen to take, which is appreciated by many, is that we are insisting that there should be dialogue. What is happening out there is undesirable. It is not what should be happening between nations. War, violence never really solves any problems. And it is for this reason that we say we would prefer and we insist that there should be mediation, there should be dialogue, and there should be negotiation. Now, I am pleased to continue hearing, and having heard it from President Putin himself, to continue hearing that the negotiations are ongoing and they are making progress. Now, for us, this is an important development. Whilst other people scream and shout, we want to focus on the outcome, the positive outcome of those negotiations and that mediation process. That is what is important. Screaming and shouting is not going to bring an end to this conflict. It is the proper engagement that is going to do so. And I have also said, I want to speak to the president of Ukraine. I want to speak to him, and we've actually said we would like to speak to him. We're also speaking to a number of other world leaders. And only last night, as I was addressing a dinner, I got a message that two other heads of states also want to talk to South Africa so that the position that we have taken can be taken forward. And some are even approaching us on a role that we can play. We are a small economy country. We never want to pretend that we've got the great influence that many other countries have, but we are being approached. And we are saying, as I said in my statement, we are ready to play a role. Now, whilst others say, condemn that one, it actually forecloses the role that we could play. You know, we played a very important role in the Northern Ireland conflict. I got involved. Prime Minister Tony Blair brought me and President Matti Ahtisaari at the time of Finland into the conflict. And we take a view as South Africa that we are not going to condemn. We're not going to condemn Britain. We are not going to condemn also those in Northern Ireland. We took that view because we knew that by condemning and doing that, we will foreclose any role we could play. And as a result, we were brought in. We were brought in to play a role to implement the Good Friday Agreement. And in the end, we created that in the end, that created a very conducive situation for the guns to be silenced in Northern Ireland. I forever remember one occasion when I was in Belfast, when an old Irish lady came to me as I was at a meeting, and she said, "You are Cyril Ramaphosa, you come from South Africa, and you've been brought here to come and resolve our conflict?" She says, "Wow, the old colonialists must be turning in their graves that now you've been brought here." Now, this is the stance that we've decided to take. And let me tell you, it is born out of our own experience. It is born out of our own history. And we believe it is the correct stance to take right now to help in the resolution of this conflict. So if you listen to me very carefully, Honorable Shengwa, right at the beginning, you would have found your answer. I'm quite happy to ensure that my answer is sent to you in print so that you can read it. Thank you very much.
The Honorable, this third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable B.N. Heron.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we can get behind much of what the President said today, that the war could have been avoided, that we advocate for peace, we don't condone the violence, we're ready to support multilateral efforts. And the President's reference now to mediation in Northern Ireland, as the President would know, there were two preconditions that former President Mandela imposed. And one was that there should be a ceasefire, and the other was that all parties should request our participation in the mediation. Last week, the President indicated that we'd been approached to mediate, and I'm wondering if the President can share with our House how we envisage that our mediation rolling out, and whether those preconditions, whether he would impose the same preconditions. Thank you.
Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. It does seem like what I'm saying today is not getting through. I did say right at the end of my initial answer that we support the efforts of the Secretary General of the United Nations
There's a letter written by National Treasury to the municipality.
Order,
Telling you to address it to my
order, Muntwa, on the virtual platform.
My apologies,
Thank you, Mr.
Honorable
President.
Speaker. The Secretary General of the United Nations has said it very clearly that he wants to see the end of this conflict and there should be a ceasefire. And clearly that is what everyone else would desire. I mean, we don't support war because war results in just too many problems and challenges for people. Now, we support the end of this war, and yet last night I was also able to say we would like the war to end. And obviously, a ceasefire is the beginning of that process to bring an end to the war. And then serious negotiations should ensue. Now, those negotiations are ongoing. I got it from none other than the president of Russia, who I spoke to, said negotiations are ongoing and they're showing some promise. Now, we have been approached by a number of other interlocutors, some of whom are not necessarily playing a direct role in the conflict. And we have said, when called upon to do so, we would be ready to make a contribution, however minor that contribution would be. So we stand ready and we stand on the side of peace. We stand on the side of dialogue. We stand on the side of negotiations. That is our position. Nothing could be clearer than what I have just said now. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Mente.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And indeed, Speaker, NATO should have taken a hint that it shouldn't have any ambition to extend to the Eastern Europe because that will cause a great instability. President, in 2001, the United States invaded Afghanistan in search of Osama bin Laden. In 2003, they, together with Britain, lied to the world and invaded Iraq under the false pretext that Iraq had nuclear weapons. All this happened without being sanctioned by multilateral institutions. From March to October 2011, NATO flattened Libya with their bombs until they murdered our brother Muammar Gaddafi. The present crisis in Eastern Europe is as a result of the push by the US to expand NATO. What impact has the unilateral destruction of countries by the US and their allies had on the ability of multilateral institutions to promote peace and harmony, coexistence amongst nations in the world? Thank you, Speaker.
The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Clearly, as I said in my main answer to the first question, once again, I said we need to look at the history. It will get through eventually. I think it's important that we should also look at the history. The Honorable Member Mente is getting us to that point where she says we need to look at what history has taught us. Some of us may forget that in 1962, the world was almost plunged into a nuclear war, when at the time the Soviet Union had sought to put missiles in Cuba. And the United States was very clear that that was something they would never allow. Because to allow a power like Russia or the Soviet Union to put its missiles in Cuba would have been an existential threat to them. And the world was brought this close to a nuclear war. I didn't quite understand at the time. I was 10 years old, but the history that I've read tells me that it could have been catastrophic. And we have seen how over time, countries have been invaded, wars have been launched, over time, over the many years. And that, as Honorable Mentor seeks to address, has left devastation. And some leaders of certain countries have also been killed. Like on our own continent, Muammar Gaddafi was killed. And that has happened over and over and over again. Now, we are saying this should be avoided, and this should be avoided by heeding the warnings. I was reading the other day that even as recently as a few years ago, Condoleezza Rice, who was like the National Security Advisor to the President of the United States, actually warned that a further expansion of NATO towards the East would just cause a great deal of instability and havoc. And leading international specialists like Henry Kissinger and many others have warned about this happening over many years. Now, this has now happened to the Ukraine. And we are saying we need to look at everything in context. We need to look at the history, but we also need to be saying we want everyone to remember what the history teaches us as we engage in dialogue and negotiations so that we can avoid this. Now, obviously, Russia has felt that this is an existential threat to them. National existential threat to them. Now, obviously, no one desires war, as I have said, and we want peace, negotiation, dialogue. I firmly believe that that is the only weapon, that an instrument that should be used to resolve conflicts. War doesn't. Sanctions don't. Various actions that can be embarked upon other than dialogue and negotiation don't. And it is for this reason that our stand is very clear as South Africa, that negotiation, dialogue, and mediation is what we are calling for. And this message, I believe, is sinking in the ears of a number of other people. Thank you very much.
Question number 2 has been asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable, the President.
Honorable Speaker, as South Africa works to recover from the damaging effects of COVID-19, our economy is confronted by several other inflationary pressures. The most immediate of these pressures is the sharp increase in the international price of oil, the price of food, as a result of the conflict in the Ukraine. The interconnectedness of the global economy means that no country will be spared from the effects of this conflict and its impact on the supply of goods such as oil and wheat is going to affect many countries around the world. Families across South Africa are already feeling the effects of rising prices in supermarkets, as well as at the petrol pump, and many are worried about how they will continue to provide for their families and make ends meet. We're using all of the levers at our disposal as a government to try and cushion South Africans from the effects of the rising costs of living. It is a major concern to us. That is why government's program of economic recovery and reconstruction focuses on responding to the immediate needs of poor and unemployed South Africans. The 2022 budget extends government support to poor and vulnerable South Africans by allocating an average of 52% of the consolidated spending to the social wage over the medium term. We extended, as we all know, the special COVID social relief of distress grant for another 12 months, with additional funding for health, education, as well as the presidential employment stimulus. Increases in all social grants, including the old age grant, will help poor households. It will help them to adjust, yes, to absorb and to be cushioned against, to some extent, against the rising food prices. Given the improvement in revenue collection, government has proposed 5.2 billion in tax relief to help support the economic recovery and to keep money, as Minister of Finance said, in the pockets of taxpayers and boost incentives for youth employment. To address the rising costs of petrol, the Minister of Finance announced that no increases will be made to the general fuel levy on petrol and diesel for 2022 and 2023 to provide for some respite from rising costs that are continuing to go up. The Department of Mineral and Resources and Energy and the National Treasury are reviewing the methodology for the basic fuel price as well as other regulated components to identify changes that could reduce, yes, the cost of fuel. Now, this is work that's underway. These changes will be implemented as soon and as quickly as possible. In short, our fiscal stance will insulate public finances against the possibility of domestic and international monetary tightening, while simultaneously supporting households, ordinary taxpayers, through higher allocations to pro-poor spending. It is important, Madam Speaker, to acknowledge that the South African economy has thus far proved to be resilient to external shocks, including the turbulence linked to the conflict in the Ukraine. We must also dispel the notion that our economic challenges were caused by the measures that were implemented to contain the spread of the coronavirus as well as to save lives. That notion exists in some quarters. It was the pandemic and not the measures that we implemented that caused a severe shock to our economy and indeed to all economies across the world. And we were not an island. Many other economies suffered exactly what we have been suffering. If we had done nothing in response to this grave threat, the economy would still have been disrupted and many more lives would have been lost. As a result of our collective actions to overcome the pandemic, including the rollout of vaccines to millions of South Africans, we've been able to lift all but the most essential restrictions. Our task now is to ensure that we remain agile and move quickly to cushion South Africans from the risk of higher inflation, to ensure that all are able to meet their basic needs and to accelerate our economic recovery. And that is the direction that we have chosen to take. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition from the Chamber.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, South Africans face a tough winter, especially poor South Africans. Price of food, fuel, and electricity are going to increase incredibly steeply and much faster than any social grant increases, which actually means that poorer South Africans are going to get poorer. Grants go up, as you said, by 4.5% next month. But electricity and fuel prices will go up by more than double that. Electricity by 9.6%, fuel by 11%. And that's due to the corruption and maladministration of your government. We already pay more for petrol than our neighboring countries, Swaziland, Botswana, Mozambique. They pay 16 Rand a litre. We pay 21 Rand a litre. And that's the price that South Africans are paying for the corruption and incompetence of government. Now, the food prices have also gone up on the back of this. Now, I'm sure billionaires don't do their own shopping, but I can tell you today, cooking oil has gone up by 28%, sugar, 6.6%, meat by 8.2%, veggies by 8.6%, and pilchards by 5%. This tin cost 15 Rand in 2015 and now costs 24 Rand. And they're going to go up more.
Order.
Mr. President.
Order, honorable members. Order.
Mr. President, there are steps, however, that your government can take to alleviate this. So will you commit today to bringing the fuel price down to 16 Rand by cutting out your levies, scrapping your sugar tax, and immediately lifting VAT on meat and chicken, because that will bring immediate relief to poor South Africans? Thank you.
Wait, hold on, order.
Oh, no. Don't throw.
Order, Minister Zulu. Order, Minister. Okay, honorable members, order. May I just remind all of us that this is a very small chamber, and whatever small comments or little noise you make, it disrupts everything we're trying to do here. The president is on the floor right now. May I request order in the chamber? Thank you very much. The President.
Honorable Speaker, if honorable member had listened very carefully to what I said, if he had listened carefully, I did say, the answer was very straight. The answer said, we are determined to take steps to cushion South Africans to the various price pressures that our people are facing. And as recently as just yesterday, we discussed it also in one of our cabinet committees. As a government, we are deeply concerned about the continued rises in prices, particularly arising from the conflict that is ensuing between Russia and the Ukraine. And we are aware, as I said, that food prices are going to go up, but not only for us, but for many other countries around the world. A number of countries are already positioning themselves and taking steps to mitigate the rise in prices. And we are looking at this. And so, you know, we've set up a committee of ministers that is going to look at precisely what the impact of the conflict is going to have on us as South Africans when it comes to fuel, when it comes to food prices, and all this is being given consideration. So, Honorable Steenhuisen, I want to thank you for some of the suggestions that you're putting forward. You are not the only one who's putting forward suggestions. You've done it in the most dramatic way today by bringing a plastic with oil, food, and bread, and Lucky Star, or whatever. Former Minister Mboweni would have been very delighted with you. So, but let me thank you for the suggestions that you're putting forward. A number of other people are coming forward with suggestions on fuel, as well as on other food prices. So all these are being given consideration, and as a compassionate government, we will find a way of addressing this as well. I can assure you, it's not only a concern to you, it's also a concern to me, as well as my fellow members of cabinet. So we have heard as we are hearing. other people. But thank you very much for your suggestion.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable J. Hermans from the Chamber.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Given your comments, Mr. President, on our global interconnectedness, considering the weakness of the rand relative to the dollar, and bearing in mind that 80% of global oil sales are traded in dollars, which largely determines the price of petrol in South Africa. One of the world's top exporters of oil, Saudi Arabia, have expressed their desire to sell the oil in Chinese yuan. It will be interesting to see how much that change, if it happens, will affect our oil prices. Noting measures you have already mentioned here today, Mr. President, what additional measures is government working on with social partners that to ensure that the projected increase in fuel prices will not trickle down to the cost of other goods, leading to an increase in the cost of living, which will very negatively affect the very poor and marginalized South Africans? Thank you.
The Honorable the President.
Thank you. One of the things that we've decided to do, yes, is to consult a number of our stakeholders, our partners, business, labor, and communities, and indeed also our traditional leaders, precisely about the effects and the impact of this conflict. So that consultation process is underway. We are going to be talking quite broadly to a number of entities or stakeholders. And through the wisdom that they will put on the table, we will be able to possibly come to an answer. And in the pot will be included even the proposals that Mr. Steenhuisen has put forward. A number of other people have put forward other proposals. So all that will be put together in the consultation process that is going to ensue. Now, we have heard that there's a suggestion that, yes, maybe the trading currency for oil and all that should be the yuan. Clearly, we have not given that consideration. It's always been traded in dollars. And with the exchange rate between our rand and the dollar, sometimes our rand is weak, sometimes it strengthens. So we haven't formed a view on the one, and it's a proposal that we have heard about, and it's something that will need to be addressed. But having said that, our concern, obviously, as stated earlier, is the rising prices that are going to impact negatively on our people. We are very much alive to that, and we will want to ensure that we secure the livelihoods of our people as much as we possibly can in ways that are also affordable for us as a government and as a country. So all this will be given consideration, and I am sure that we will come to correct decisions that will be able to address the needs of our people. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Swart.
Thank you, Speaker. Honorable President, much of what you've covered already relates to the fuel price, which I was going to add to, but may I add one or two suggestions as well? Research on the fuel price regulation has found that a combination of regulatory amendments, as you pointed out, can reduce the petrol price by up to 103 cents per litre. And these include amendments to the international component, which you pointed out, as proposed by the department as way back in 2018, but never implemented. So that is one aspect which I'm pleased you referred to and which will be considered. Yeah. Secondly, almost dramatically ironic in view of the war in Russia and Ukraine, the commodities prices will increase, which could result in a further tax windfall, which could then further cushion the fiscus and allow for a consideration for reduction in the tax levies of the fuel price. And I would ask you, President, you indicated that this review will take place as soon as possible, but would you prevail upon the ministers to consider this and then obviously to try to apply for this and decide on this issue as quickly as possible, given the impact that the fuel price has? Thank you, President.
The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I would be able to give Honorable Swart a fairly easy and straightforward answer and say, yes, we will seek to prevail on the ministers to consider this as well, because this is another dimension that needs to be looked at. And I certainly will want every aspect of this whole issue to be addressed as much as we possibly can. But I'd like to thank you once again for the suggestion to be taken up.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Mautwe.
Thank you very much, Speaker. President, about 44% of the population is unemployed, and over 70% of the youth population is unemployed in this country that you're leading. The levels of unemployment were at the crisis level even before COVID struck. Despite this stark reality, we have seen numerous attempts by your government to reduce dramatically the role of the state in facilitating development. State-owned companies are all being collapsed. There's no significant infrastructure development program that can catalyze employment creation. Instead, we have hedged all your bets on private companies to create jobs and lift South Africa out of the mess it is in. In your reading of economic history of socio-economic degeneration by handing over the responsibility of developing their countries to the private sector, why do you think the strategy will work here if it has never worked anywhere else? I thank you, Speaker.
The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I don't want to refer any member to some of the inputs that I made in this August House, but if the Honorable Speaker or Honorable Member remembers the State of the Nation debate and my reply thereto, we stated very clearly that yes, we would like to create a conducive environment to enable those who create 70% of the job pool in our country to create those jobs. At the same time, the state will continue playing its role. Now, it isn't true that, for instance, our infrastructure plans are amounting to zero. We've come here and the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure has been to this House and outlined the infrastructure plans that we are putting in place, how we're dealing with the incapabilities of the past to make sure that our ability to roll out infrastructure and to attract investment pays the dividends that we want. And a number of projects are already underway of an infrastructure type, and many more are going to follow. And already just this year, we're going to be rolling out infrastructure projects worth about 96 billion. And we have already set up our infrastructure fund, which already has money in it, and the private sector has demonstrated very, very keen interest to participate. And similarly, the public enterprises that we have are also going to be rolling out their own infrastructure plans, as in Transnet, PRASA, yes, and a number of others are going to be embarking on mega infrastructure projects. And all those will in the end create jobs. But the most jobs are created by small and medium enterprises. In other countries, small and medium enterprises create up to 60-65% of the jobs. In our country, it's still low, and that is why we are seeking to create an environment in which this engine of growth can actually come into its own and create the jobs. At the same time, we as the state will continue playing the role that we are. And it is for this reason that we focus on youth employment through the presidential employment stimulus, which already just last year succeeded in bringing in 600,000, mostly young people and women, into the job situation. That is the role that we see ourselves continuing to play. Already we have said that we are going to assist and support 250,000 small-scale farmers, because we see agriculture as another sector that can create well over 1 million jobs. So all those efforts are underway, and it isn't true that we're not doing anything on the job creation side. Yes, it continues to be a heavy burden. Many more people, young people, are joining the ranks of the unemployed, and that is why we are focusing on how we can bring young people into the world of work. And I believe that, yes, we will succeed. COVID-19 did not serve us well. It just exacerbated the situation. Almost 2 million people lost their jobs because a number of companies, and not only in our own country, but in many other countries, had to close down. They went bankrupt, and they didn't find markets for their goods and services. So all that needs to be taken into account as we analyze the situation that we are in. But government is not sitting on its laurels. We're doing everything we can to try and address the situation. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Question number 3 has been asked by the Honorable J.S. Malema. The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, the outgoing National Commissioner of the South African Police Service, General Kehla Sithole, and I have been in communication over some time about matters that led to the mutual agreement on the early termination of his contract. Now, these discussions were therefore not related to the crime statistics for October to December 2021, but were instead guided by what would be in the best interests of the country, as we said in the statement. The latest crime statistics reflect the huge task we face as a society to combat crime and violence. These statistics show improvements in some areas, but they also show reversals in other areas. Between October to December 2020 and the same period in 2021, for example, there was a 9% increase in murders and a 14% increase in car hijackings. At the same time, there was a 9% drop in sexual offenses and an 8% decline in burglaries and other property-related crimes. Now, while these quarterly statistics are important for tracking crime trends and informing our responses, the reality is that crime remains stubbornly high in our country. This reality reminds us that reducing crime is a responsibility that all of us need to shoulder. As the police, as political leaders, as communities, as families, as business people, and as workers and as civil society. The recruitment of 12,000 additional police officers, amongst other measures, to strengthen the police will help us to turn the tide and create safer communities for all. Honorable Malema knows that when the president appoints or releases ministers, he does not consult the public. It is the president's decision, and let it remain like that. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable J.S. Malema.
Thank you very much, Speaker and Mr. President. Any responsible president will know that even when you have power to appoint ministers, you do so in the best interest of our people. It's not a power that you just go around flaunting without exercising it in a rational manner. No one has ever questioned your capacity or your constitutional powers to appoint any cabinet. With this power that you go around, displaying and not displaying it and not using it correctly. Ayanda Ngila of our Talibasem Jondolo has been killed. 8 people killed in one day in Kailicha, more 8 in Menembek. And many other people are killed on daily basis, Mr. President, and not this time around, not only in the townships. We've seen Professor Mohammed Tayop, University of Limpopo professor being killed, Heavy Pablo being killed. We've seen a club owner, Don Eje, a Nigerian citizen, the owner of Black Door Club in Santin, being kidnapped daylight in the suburbs. They are no longer even hiding. They are now shooting people on daylight in front of cameras. They no longer wear ballad gloves. They don't hide. Reason being that there is no policing in South Africa and there is no visible policing in all suburbs and townships of South Africa. Now, the problem is that you have taken a person who was a commissioner, you made him a minister. And because he's got a competing interest of being a commissioner at the same time being a minister, he interferes with the powers of commissioners. I can guarantee you now, you can appoint any commissioner you so wish. The most capable person in your life, anyone that you regard as the most capable person, you can appoint that person. That person will never succeed. Whether you take Signimu Famadi there or not, to be a commissioner, as long as Begitele is the minister, he will never succeed in fighting crime. So what is it that you are so scared about, Honorable Begitele? So much that you are prepared to allow our people to die like flies because you want to satisfy political expediency. What is it that, if you think he possesses a lot of support in KZN, which you think you want, why can't you redeploy him to another department and keep us a capable minister to fight crime in this country? Crime is a nightmare, Mr. President. Stop telling us you've got the power to appoint ministers. We know that. But exercise it to the benefit of our people.
Honorable Malema.
We're talking about, we know it, but for as long
Honorable member, this is a statement. Please raise your question.
On a point of order. On the point of order.
Question, Honorable Speaker. What is it that is so scared of Honorable Begitele to a point where it's prepared to compromise the lives of...
On a point of order.
Order.
When Achiko style Utomi Iliman.
Order. There is only one chair presiding at the moment. Mama, thank you very much. The President, honorable members, please, will you please take note of what I raised earlier on? This chamber is very small. Whatever it is, the little that you do actually distracts everybody. Just stop it. We have to stop it, honorable member, and behave like the adults and the leaders of our parties, representatives of our people here in this chamber. Thank you very much. The President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Malema was very eloquent in describing the situation that we find ourselves in from a criminality point of view. And he touched on important issues like visible policing, and that criminals are now so brazen and so bold as to be able to embark on criminal activity in broad daylight. And if he listened very carefully to my State of the Nation address, and also my reference now to saying the steps that we are going to take to strengthen the police service by also bringing in up to 12,000 new police recruits, he would have realized that we are taking steps to address this challenge. Visible policing is a challenge, and by bringing in more police, we will be able to edge more and more towards having police being visible so that they can execute their task of dealing with those who want to perpetrate acts of criminality. And of course, what we have said over time is that our population has risen. And over time, we have not lifted the numbers of our police, men and women, in tandem with the rising population. So the ratio between citizens and the police has lessened quite a lot, or increased quite a lot on the wrong side. And we therefore need to bring that into line and make sure that we have sufficient number of police, but also to increase their own capability. And this is one of the measures that we are taking to improve the security situation in the country so that South Africans can feel safe. He wants to know what, as president, I am scared of doing a whole number of things. Minister, Kiri Minister, our minister, when I'm a lema. Baraku ke nyobe minister. No, Malema no does not want to be a minister of opposition. If not, I'm a president. So, but all I can say is that, Honorable Malema, I've heard what you have said, but I fear Foko. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable T.M. Jumat Peterson from the Chamber.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much, Honorable President, honorable members. If Honorable Malema is looking for another midnight cabinet reshuffle, he's speaking to the wrong president. So, Honorable President, you announced in your State of the Nation address that the number of changes would be made in the security agencies to strengthen our security structures. Congratulations, you have done exactly this. So what additional measures, Honorable President, will your government be undertaking in the entire criminal justice system to ensure the effectiveness and efficiency in dealing with crime and fighting corruption? I thank you.
Honorable the President.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Jumat Peterson, yes, we are taking measures. Security situation in our country is challenged, and everyone is concerned about the lapses, about the problems that beset our security complex, and we are taking measures. Firstly, as I said in the State of the Nation address, we would be bringing in people, changing the guard in a number of entities, and it is the entirety of the criminal justice system that we are reforming. And the reform is also going to be in line with the policy or strategy that is going to be put in place to ensure that we do have a better handle on the security situation in the country. It has been raised by members, including by yourself, Honorable Jumat Peterson, in your discussions with me. And this is a matter that we are addressing. And the changes that you have already seen and many more will be coming. We will ensure that the security of our country is placed in a much better position. Now, a number of events that have happened in our country of a criminal nature, as well as of an unrest nature, are matters of great concern to all of us. As for the police themselves, they are already doing quite a great deal of work, setting up special units, for instance, for the construction mafia, those who seek to hijack building projects. A special unit is being set up. The special unit that focuses on bank heists or the heists of money vehicles. We've already seen great successes in that regard. And in the mining sector, great deal of work is being done. And on cable theft, we're working with the private sector to focus on all that. And a whole range of other areas where people who want to participate in criminal activity have been busy and disrupting and making the country unstable. We're focusing on that. And I am very confident that we are going to see great progress as we move forward. But thank you very much for continuing to raise these issues, Honorable Jumat Peterson. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. President. When you reshuffled your cabinet the last time, you said, and I quote, "We are determined to build a capable state, which is ably led and which effectively serves the needs of the people," unquote.
Yeah.
But look at the crime stats, look at the Zondo report, look at the July riots report, which says your poverty ministers must take some blame. But you always go after the DGs or the officials, never the poverty cabinet, which is too big, too incompetent, and too corrupt to get the job done. Where are your promised performance agreements for cabinet ministers? Nowhere. Where are your lifestyle audits for cabinet ministers? Nowhere. You protect your poverty cabinet even though they have stopped protecting citizens. You can't beat poverty with a poverty cabinet. Mr. President, you took an oath of office to put South Africa first. And so the question that I must ask you today is, why won't you take action against ministers who are crooked, corrupt, or indifferent? Thank you.
Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Processes that we get involved in strengthening the capacity of the state have to be overarching. They have to be focused. We have to look at every aspect of the work that we do. And I have put together a team of people who have demonstrated over time that they have a number of competencies and capabilities. And of course, what I do know as a politician in South Africa, that we always don't agree. We differ on a whole range of issues, including on who should be appointed to whatever position. And I do know that whenever I make an appointment, which if I'm constitutionally entitled to make, there will be those who will have different views. And you know, we live in a free country. People are entitled to have different views. We are entitled to see things differently. And that is the beauty of our constitutional architecture. So in this regard, we do have differences of approach and of opinion. And it is not that I don't take counsel from even members of the opposition. I do listen. And I do take into account what is being said. But we must also agree and accept that there are points where we may differ, even about policy matters, about the capability of people, be they directors general, be they ministers, and what have you. And in the end, you are absolutely right. I took an oath an oath that I will put South Africa first, and this is precisely what I always seek to do. South Africa first. Now, we may even differ on that, because some of you may think that, no, I don't put South Africa first, I put myself first, I put whoever first, and so on and so on. But my commitment to the Republic cannot be questioned. I am irrevocably pro-South Africa, and I put this country forward. Thank you very much. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The last supplementary question will be raised by the Honorable PJ Groenewald from the chamber.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable President, you're quite correct. It's your prerogative to appoint your executive, and I respect that. But I personally think that part of the problem in the police is that your Minister of Police was a former Commissioner of Police, although he had no experience as a police person, and I will come to that with my next question. And on the 16th of August, 2012, we had the Marikana situation, the post-94 Sharpeville situation in South Africa. The Farlam Commission was appointed to look into that matter, and it made various recommendations, and I want to quote to you only two of them. It says the executive should not make any operational decisions for the police. If they give guidance, this should be properly recorded. It also says operational decisions should only be made by an officer that has the necessary training, skills, and experience, specifically in public order policing. Now, Honorable President, my follow-up question is, the present Minister of Police, he wants to also make certain operational decisions. And that's where there was a problem created. Now, my question is, did you implement any of the Farlam Commission's recommendations? If not, why not? If so, was there any effort to record any recommendations from the Minister as far as operational issues are concerned? Thank you, Honorable President.
The Honorable, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The Farlam Commission made a number of recommendations. A number of them have been implemented. The one that you cite, and which really reared its head, particularly during the July unrest, is the public order policing one, which we have admitted we never really sort of increased the number of public order police and also their direct training. And that one, I think we have said we have not implemented in full. Now you want to know, and you are obviously putting forward an opinion that the minister interferes in operational matters. It is an opinion. He is the political head. Ministers are political heads. And the reason we have directors general is because the directors general, apart from being appointed by cabinet, in the end, finally signed off by the president, they are appointed because they have a speciality in the areas that they are appointed to. And so therefore they are the accounting officers. They need to take responsibility and accountability for the running of the department. The minister is an oversight official or person who should ensure that policy is made and policy is implemented. So those processes are processes that we often want to see adhered to. So your opinion, therefore, is that no, there is interference. And I think sometimes, yes, there can be a straddling of the lanes, but we always, through the various, even the performance agreements that we have signed, want to make sure that there is adherence to the policy side, to the oversight side, and leave the running of the department to those people who've been appointed to do that. And that is a process, Honorable Groenewald, that we want to continue engendering even as we move forward. But your views have been heard. Thank you very much.
Question number 4 has been asked by the Honorable F. Jacobs. The Honorable, the President.
Honorable Speaker, the central pillar of government's program is to grow the economy and to create employment. And we are and have taken far-reaching measures to unleash the potential of our economy, but particularly focusing also on small businesses, micro small businesses, and informal businesses. This includes reducing the costs of doing business and removing barriers to entry for small businesses. South Africa does not lack an entrepreneurial spirit. Entrepreneurship is abundant in our country. Our people are brimming with wonderful ideas about starting businesses, running businesses, creating products, and providing services. We also have abundant talent in our country, and we have the requisite energy and creativity. And there are many entrepreneurs who are ready and willing to start their own businesses. I had occasion just last weekend to be in Mafikeng and met a horde of young people who are creating unbelievable gadgets, stuff that one would never have thought would be created by these young people. They're creating gadgets. One of them just blew my mind because I'm a farmer, creates a gadget that tests your soil and immediately tells you what you can plant in particular soil and what you need to input in terms of fertilizer and so forth in the soil. And this is being done by our young people. And the innovation centers that are being set up around the country enable them to do precisely that. So we do have talent, we do have energy, and all we need to do is to unlock that energy. Too often, however, these entrepreneurs are frustrated by excessive regulation and work under a massive burden of compliance. The compliance process in our country is just too overbearing. It just drowns you. In order to just start a business, to run a business, you've got to do so many compliance measures that you immediately just feel discouraged. And it is for this reason that I announced in the State of the Nation address that we would create the dedicated capacity in the presidency to reduce red tape and to have a team that will be led by Mr. Sipho Nkosi to do precisely that. And already the planning and the ideas that are coming forward are the types that are going to do precisely that. And the focus is not only going to be, yes, on small and medium enterprise, it's going to be on looking at a variety of areas where the strictures of the red tape are enabling South Africans to move forward. Now, this team will identify priority reforms and work with other departments and agencies to simplify the regulatory processes and unlock specific obstacles to investment as well as to business growth. It will build on existing work undertaken by other departments, be it the Department of Trade and Industry, the Department of Small Business Development, and indeed a number of others in infrastructure build, in water and sanitation, and many others. Focus areas in 2022 should include the work that is being done with SARS to improve the turnaround times for processing things like VAT refunds for small medium enterprising, reviewing onerous licensing requirements that make it difficult to start and operate a business, making it easier for SMMEs, for instance, to do business with the state and working with private and government funding institutions to also make it easier for SMEs to access the credit needed to operate and grow their businesses. I have made it clear that our job is to enable businesses, not to stifle them. In addition to the measures, the Department of Small Business Development and other public institutions such as the National Youth Development Agency will continue to provide funding and support to small medium enterprises. The Small Medium Enterprise Development Agency, SEDA, will continue to establish new incubators and digital hubs that provide a broad range of business development to support SMEs and cooperatives, particularly in underserved areas. This will include centers for entrepreneurship, the rapid incubators in institutions of higher learning to foster a culture of entrepreneurship amongst young people, amongst students, and to convert job seekers to being job creators. CEDA has also developed the Basic Entrepreneurship Skills Development Program, which is funded by the National Skills Fund. Now, this program uses coaching to facilitate and reinforce learning and development support to emerging entrepreneurs. Now, this shows that we are focusing on engendering an entrepreneurial spirit in our nation. More than 2,000 emerging entrepreneurs have to date been supported through this program. Through our Youth Challenge Fund, we aim to support 10,000 young innovators over the next year, particularly the type that I met in Mafikeng, who are full of ideas and want to create things. We're implementing a program to support entrepreneurship in schools called Step Up to a Startup, which encourages learners to consider entrepreneurship as an alternative career to employment. The program aims to equip learners with entrepreneurial knowledge and skills that are needed to start and manage their own businesses. Of course, they still need to get into some form of employment so that they can learn the skills. But if they are imbued with entrepreneurial training right from the school level, the future could be brighter for them. By making it easier for small businesses to grow, by expanding access to finance and support, and by reaching out to young would-be entrepreneurs, we are determined to unleash this potential. And as I said, there is great potential amongst South Africans. All we need to do is to create that conducive environment for them to be able to thrive. Wherever I go, I find that many South Africans want to run their own small, medium, and big businesses. And what we now need to do as the government is to encourage that spirit of entrepreneurship among South Africans so that they can get on and create jobs and create better livelihoods for themselves and for their families. This is what our country needs, and this is what we are committed to doing. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The first supplementary question will be asked by Honorable F. Jacobs from the chamber, but I see there's a hand there. I don't know whether it's a point of order. What is it?
Speaker, indeed it is a point of order. You'll pardon me for delaying in raising this matter, but firstly, I didn't want to disturb the President and the people who are asking follow-up questions, and secondly, I had to find out from first language speakers of Afrikaans whether the word Afrikaans focal is parliamentary. And they confirmed that indeed it is not parliamentary. You will recall that when the President responded to a follow-up question by the Honorable Julius Malema, he said if he has focal, it would be, it would be a sad day, Speaker, if the word focal enters the lexicon of Parliament because the President used it here, because MPs will use it in future and will not be able to call them to order.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I will consult and just make sure that my Afrikaans is reg. You may proceed, Honorable President.
Thank you.
Yes, Honorable.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Jacobs. Yes, thank you. Sorry, Mr. President.
We appreciate the priority reforms His Excellency the President outlined. Indeed, small business is everybody's business. Given market concentration and the perception of bullying, how will we encourage greater private sector and especially big business support, nurture, and also to grow the informal and emerging sector and small business?
Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, maybe to save you from going through Hansard, willing, prepared, able to say, as soon as I use that word, almost said, Madam Speaker, I shouldn't have said that. And so, so to save you the trouble, Honorable Member, cancel it and maybe just say nix. And nix is an Afrikaans term as well.
Thank you, Mr. President. You saved me from.
Yes, I withdraw.
Thank you.
No.
He is
you want me to say I'm withdrawing for call?
Mr. President, you may proceed.
Honorable Speaker, point of order.
No, he wants me to say I withdraw for call. So it means I withdraw nothing.
What mini circus is this? Can the House
Honorable
continue?
Speaker, may I
Honorable
attribute,
Swart, you have the floor.
may I attribute that to the lack of medication the President referred to earlier this morning? At the beginning, the President referred to a possible lack of medication. So we appreciate the withdrawal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Swart. The Honorable the President.
Madam Speaker, it must be the lack of
On a point of order, Speaker.
There's a point of order on the virtual platform.
Under which rule did Honorable Swart stand to a point where you even recognized him and accepted his input? Which rule is that?
No. Honorable Malema. Imanigalo. Hold on, honorable members. I have not requested you to respond to what Honorable Malema has said. I am responding to Honorable Malema, please. Honorable Malema, if you noted something earlier on before Honorable Swart, Honorable Kwangwa could not raise a point of order. I don't know whether their microphones are off or not, but he did try to indicate that he used, action to show me that he wanted to speak, and I allowed him to speak. So the same applies to Honorable Swart. When he stood, I just knew that it means that I even asked, is that an order, point of order? And he said yes, and I allowed him to speak. So please, Honorable Member, what is important is I don't want people to start screaming here and call for points of order. At least he indicated that he would like to speak, and I afforded him that opportunity, which is the same thing I did for Honorable Kwangwa.
Honorable Speaker, under which rule is Honorable Swart standing? Kwangwa's point of order was in order. If Honorable Swart is standing under the point of order rule, then you have to make a ruling, because it can't be that people are out of order when they say things that you don't like, and then when they say things that you like, even when they are not in order, you allow it to pass. It becomes a circus. It's no longer a parliament that operates within the rules.
Okay, Honorable Malema, I've taken note of the point you have raised. May I now request the Honorable President to proceed?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. There is a role to be played by all in the private sector, particularly medium and I would say big business, to help small and informal enterprises, and to do so in a variety of ways through their supply chain, but in doing so also to help support and also strengthen and mentor those who are in the small, medium, and informal businesses, because that in a way will increase the ecosystem within the business sector and particular sectors of the economy. And through that, the private sector would be able to create more entrepreneurs in our country instead of continuing just to rely on the same old ones that they've always used. But also it is of a transformational nature. Transformation would be best served by getting those who were previously prevented from participating in business, particularly women, as well as young people. Now, I would argue that big business would doing themselves a great favor through their enterprise development initiatives to support women, to ensure that the procurement processes tilt towards supporting women and those who have been previously disadvantaged and prevented from participating in these businesses. In that way, Madam Speaker, we create a wholesome process where everyone knows that they are welcome to participate and where we actually ensure that the cake that we bake is much bigger and everyone then benefits. That is the way our country should be going. And it is for this reason that I call on big business to support the emergence of new enterprises, small, informal enterprises, and medium enterprises, and give them work through procurement, through mentorship, through real support, financial and otherwise, as well as implements, as well as machinery, so that they're able to get up and going. So if we can all do that, that will be a greater, but it also goes beyond just that. The financial institutions themselves need to participate in this so that banks and other financial institutions also find ways of reducing their very, very complex and difficult requirements and enable small, medium enterprises to participate, and also see how the guarantee system of process that we've put in place can be of great assistance. So I think through this, Madam Speaker, we are creating an environment that can enable small and medium enterprises to thrive. And this should not be government's responsibility alone. It should be our collective responsibilities. And education institutions also have a role to play. I'd like to see more and more universities increasing disciplines, courses for small, medium enterprises, people to go and learn various skills, even if it is short skills, financial management and manufacturing capabilities and all that. So it is through this that we will be able to create a wonderful growing economy. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable MGE Hendricks through the virtual platform.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, Honorable President. Tonight is the most holiest night for Muslims to say prayers, and those prayers are always accepted. And we pray for the cabinet, for yourself, and for this house. Creating an entrepreneurial psyche, Your Excellency, is a revolutionary demand by the whip of the Small Business Portfolio Committee, on which I also serve. I got an award as one of the pioneers of internet.
Stop, you can't.
Honorable Paulnita Marais. Honorable Paulnita, please. You may proceed, Honorable Hendricks.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I got an award as one of the pioneers of the internet in 2002, and the entrepreneurial spin-offs of my initiative created millions of jobs and opportunities in South Africa. So had I not been with an entrepreneurial psyche like the WIP referred to, Honorable President, you and South Africans may have had to wait longer to get into the fourth industrial revolution. We now need a government to be the pioneer. Honorable Your Excellency, are you prepared to crack the whip? There are 10,000 villages in South Africa. I have a constituency which covers 10 of them. What assistance can you give to me to make these villages connected to the cities and outside world so they can demonstrate they are compliant to become, for example, call centers doing work for over 40 government departments and potentially to even the South African corporate sector and in time for overseas customers too. Any such assistance will connect my constituency not only to jobs but to training and development and to the opportunity for some to even start their own small online businesses. There are no innovation centers, incubators, digital hubs in our villages. And we want to know whether, Honorable President, you will visit, for example, Mapami village, which has an ocean with 13 kinds of fish and a forest with the straightest trees.
Question, Honorable Hendricks.
If you cannot make it, those who will you direct will leave with a basket of fish. So the question is, what support are you going to give our villages, which are the Cinderellas in South Africa?
The Honorable, the President.
Honorable Speaker, I would be very, very pleased to go and visit that village and go and enjoy, did you say, different types of fish that they have. I would want you to guide me there. And thank you very much for your prayers for the cabinet and for the government. We always welcome that. And also prayers, I guess, for members of parliament. It should not just be for the cabinet, including Honorable Steenhuisen here. He needs prayers as well. I should say, Honorable Speaker, that one of the major projects that we have is SA Connect. It is through SA Connect that we want and are going to be connecting the various parts of our country. It's a massive project that government has decided on embarking upon, and so that everyone in South Africa is able to have a measure of connection to the internet and be online, do business online, learn online, and do a whole variety of things. As it is now, not many areas in our country are connected, and that is a matter of concern to us. So we would like to see as many parts of our country, particularly villages, being connected, and SA Connect is that project that we are going to unfold and so that it envelopes the whole country. I'm confident that through this, we will be able to catapult our country into the 4IR scenario so that they are able to converse, to communicate, to do business, to learn what's happening also in other parts of the world, and to trade as well. We have found that when people are connected, they're then able to trade in an exponential manner. That has been proven over and over, and that's precisely what we would like to do. So SA Connect is the answer to what the Honourable Member was raising. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. Mr. President, the lockdown is actually the single biggest piece of red tape tying up our economic recovery. And the real disaster in South Africa is the jobs and the poverty disaster caused by your poverty cabinet, which is a permanent disaster, and I would frankly say beyond prayer. International tourism now is only 20% of what it was before COVID-19. The tourism industry used to drive 10% of job creation in South Africa. Tourists are now going to countries where they don't have to do expensive PCR tests, they don't have to wear masks, and they're able to go to stadiums to watch sports functions. COVID regulations are strangling government service delivery as well, and many places are still operating on reduced or rotational staff. And the biggest people suffering as a result of this are the poor who rely on government services more. Mr. President, you've told us right from the beginning that you've been led by science. Severe illness rates are now low. Hospitals are not overflowing with COVID cases. So how do you justify keeping South Africa's economy on its knees by extending the state of disaster and now legislating the lockdown into permanence? Thank you.
Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Now, Honorable Steenhuisen will remember me standing here in the City Hall saying that we are going to lift the state of disaster. We are at level 1, and I explained very carefully, very carefully that there are certain measures that we will need to keep under management to enable us to have the wherewithal to keep, if you like, a tab on the pandemic. The pandemic is still here with us. COVID-19 has not suddenly just disappeared through the door or the window. And we are still concerned about those people who get infected, who get hospitalized, and who die. We are concerned about those people who have not been vaccinated as yet. And all that still needs to be properly managed by a responsible government. Now, what have I said? I said, we're now going to want to rely on health measures. Health measures, for instance, that will say, if you are in an enclosed place like this, where there's no proper ventilation, you are still required to wear a mask. Now, you cannot just breathe that into existence. You've got to regulate it, and it's got to be regulated by a legal instrument, a law, a regulation. Now, what we've said we would do, we would move away from the harder state of disaster regulation to a health one, because we are dealing with a health pandemic, a pandemic that affects our health as a whole. So that requires a regulation so that when we are gathered like this, the speaker should be able to say, as she does all the time, that unless you are speaking and if you're sitting, wear your mask. She needs an instrument to be able to direct us to wear that mask. So that is a health regulation that we've now put in place. Now, if you have a problem with that, I mean, I am sorry, we are government. So we've got to put regulations in place. And because as opposition, you have a different view, but you are not government. No, our scientists are telling us precisely this. Now, I can admit that you've always had a problem from day one, right from word go. If you were ever positive, Honorable Steenhuisen, it was at one meeting when I called the political parties. It was the only time. Beyond that, it was saying, you don't need the state of disaster. And we kept on saying we are led by science, and we've had some of the leading scientists which you differ with, and it's your freedom, you're entitled to differ even with scientists. but we have been guided by those scientists. You can shout as much as you like, but we as government act in the interest of South Africans, and that is why they elected us. Now we are being very careful because there's nothing about killing jobs by saying people should wear a mask in a room like this. Really, I mean, it defies logic. It really defies logic. How are we killing jobs? In fact, we are creating jobs because there are people who make those masks. There are new factories that have come up that make masks so that we can all feel safe. Now, for the life of me, I still want someone to come and tell me what it is that we are destroying jobs through by continuing this health measures. Because when we lift, listen to me.
By closing stadiums, you are killing jobs. By closing stadiums, you are killing jobs.
Point of order. Honorable Speaker.
Allow me to protect.
Now, we've been going through a process. Now, let me tell you something. Many countries around the world are exactly where we are. And those countries that have opened up their stadiums to 100% participation, they are at 70, 80% vaccination. Now, we've been saying, and I've been saying it ad nauseum, let us all as leaders participate in encouraging our people to vaccinate. I am yet to hear and to see leaders in the opposition benches talking about vaccination, going on the ground and getting people to be vaccinated. Instead, they talk against vaccination, and all they talk about is precisely what is being said here. Now, I don't buy into that. I'm afraid we've done everything to manage this pandemic. The interests of our people when it comes to lives and their livelihoods has been my greatest preoccupation for the better part of the last 2 years. And as I have said, I want to see the state of disaster coming to an end. But I'm not going to be reckless. I am not going to be reckless. I am going to be orderly. I'm going to be orderly, and in days, I'm going to address the nation and explain precisely where we are headed to and how we should traverse this new route that we are going on. So we will outline precisely. Now, the regulations have been published, the health regulations, and there are processes that we are engaging with various leaders and so on. We've met traditional leaders, we've met various other leaders, as well as religious leaders, talking precisely about this. And I can assure you again, Honorable Steenhuisen, we are going to lift the state of disaster. We are, Nini, soon. And we are going to put in place health regulations that will enable everyone to feel safe. But at the same time, we want to boost vaccination. A number of countries have said to us, and let me tell you, we go through a lot of consultations, also international. A number of countries have told us that they reached an inflection point of vaccination at about 43, 44%, like where we are now, where the resistance to vaccination is evident. And there are measures that they have had to take to boost vaccination to a higher level. And that's precisely what we want to embark upon. And I want to rely on political party leaders here to join us in the process of increasing the level of vaccination in our country. I therefore want to hear you vocally speak about it, because I have not heard that. And this is about the lives of South Africans. Let us all work together and ensure that our people get vaccinated in their hundreds and millions. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the
On a
honorable.
point of order, Speaker, on a point of order, Speaker.
Point of order,
On a
yes.
point of order, Speaker.
Yes, you have the floor.
No, the president is not telling the truth that political parties from the opposition parties have not called for vaccinations. What we have said is that we don't want to be imposed with Western vaccinations. We are not spokespeople of Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer. Approve vaccines from
But you are discussing now, you are making, no. Honorable Shivambu, this is not a point of order. You are advancing your own arguments on the matter. Please, honorable member, if it's a point of order, make your point of order. If it is an engagement on the matter which is being under discussion, then you find time to do so. For now, it is not a point of order. I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Honorable Shivambu. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable OMC Mautwe.
Thank you very much, Speaker. You know, President, when you know that a leader is clueless and have no idea of what he's dealing with, he starts by affirming his position. Earlier on, you were telling us that you are the one who appoints ministers, and then you just said now that you are leading the government. So it's a sign that you are clueless about this thing. But let me go ahead with my question, Speaker. Your attempts to centralize power in your office, President, are a cause for concern. First, you took over intelligence services and placed them in your office, and then you took over responsibilities of coordinating climate change response by the country away from the Department of Environmental Affairs to your office. Now, cutting red tape for small businesses has been removed from the Ministry of Small Business Development into your office. Have you lost confidence in the ability of your ministers to lead the kind of change you want to see in this country? Are these presidential panels not creating parallel centers of authority and therefore hindering delivery of services? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. No, Mr. President, before you take your stand, Mr. President, I beg, withdraw what you've said.
Withdraw, Speaker.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I won't repeat what he said, but that was foul language. Thank you very much. Mr. President, the Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, thank you very much. I think the Honorable Member has said what she's saying before. And all I would say is that no, what we are seeking to do is to increase the capability of the state. The presidency plays a particular role in increasing that capability of the state. And already we are seeing quite a lot of progress as a result of some of the measures and the initiatives that we have taken. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Question number 5 has been asked by the Honorable Hlengwa. Honorable the President.
I apologize, Honorable Speaker, for speaking before you gave me permission. But Honorable Speaker, thank you once again. And honorable members, state-owned enterprises are critical drivers of inclusive economic growth and social development in our country. However, the reports released by the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture demonstrate the extent of the repurposing, the damage, and the theft caused by state capture. We are therefore working to reposition strategic SOEs to fulfill their vital economic and social mandates. International good practice suggests that a centralized shareholder model, along with a central authority to house strategic state-owned companies, is the best way to ensure effective oversight. A centralized shareholder management model is likely to entail the following. Firstly, a holding company that is 100% owned by the state. Secondly, an active shareholder approach to continuously set, monitor, evaluate SOE performance in relation to commercial, and development objectives. Thirdly, ensuring commercial sustainability of SOEs with minimum or no reliance on the fiscus. And fourthly, development of an appropriate capital structure for the holding company to ensure profitability, sustainability of each SOE. Based on the recommendations of the Presidential SOE Council, government is reviewing state ownership policy in terms of which SOEs need to be owned by the state as well as the extent thereof. The Presidential SOE Council is evaluating the financial and operational status of major SOEs that we have in our country and reviewing the turnaround plans for each SOE in crisis. The journey that we have embarked on will transform the manner in which our state-owned enterprises are governed, are managed, are monitored for the benefit of the nation as a whole. I think this is a transformation that is long overdue. It was preceded by a commission that was set up to look into state-owned enterprises, but now we are honing into exactly what needs to be done with regard, firstly, to the implementation of the Commission's report, but also what needs to be done in this current moment, particularly post-state capture environment that we are now going to enter into. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable M. Shengwa.
And thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, of course, all the aspects which you have attributed to a holding company, the four aspects in particular, are basic elementary aspects which should really arise regardless of the structure into which government may be wanting to actually handle and run SOEs. So what is at play here, Mr. President, is that this move to establish yet another SOE is an admission on the part of your government that DPE has been a total failure in managing these SOEs and should have been abolished a long time ago and have these SOEs in their land function departments where the necessary skills, knowledge, and expertise of each sector are actually housed. The second point, Mr. President, is that without running the risk of another patronizing outlook to say I should listen to you or read, so far as your responses are concerned, you attribute this to state capture. Yet, Mr. President, we are awaiting you to actually give us the implementation plan insofar as the State Capture Commission is concerned. Are you now in a piecemeal approach before that, responding and implementing recommendations of the State Capture Commission? And if you are, then why are we waiting for the end of June? The bottom line, however, Mr. President, is that we have heard all this rhetoric before and nothing has changed. It's merely a change of names and semantics. The issue is that government is wholly inadequately capacitated to manage and run SOEs, and the results are in ESCOM, PRASA, Transnet, amongst others, whom are all literally on their knees, rolling blackouts. And so to really put a plaster on this sore is in itself, Mr. President, very irresponsible. But the bottom line is that
question, Honorable Shengwa, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
But that was a speech. It was a statement, not a question.
The President is at liberty to respond to the argument I'm making against his SOE holding company.
The Honorable, sorry, Mr. President, there's a point of order there. The Honorable Kwahube.
Thank you, Speaker. Just to bring to your attention that the member that asked the follow-up question, that is in their name, they have 2 minutes to ask their question. And regardless of how they use their 2 minutes, as long as they stick within that 2-minute time frame. So I do just want to bring that to your attention.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kwahube. Your point is noted. Shengwa, do you have a question? Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I am
Thank you,
advancing.
Honorable Shengwa. The Honorable, the President, the Honorable, the President.
My apologies, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Steenhuisen is distracting me. Maybe he should not sit so close to where I'm standing. Honorable Speaker, I must be frank, I did not decipher a question from what Honorable Hlengwa was saying. However, I should maybe want to comment on some of the issues he put forward. And the most important one was, I thought he wanted to know whether I was implementing the State Capture Commission report on a piecemeal basis by coming forward with this proposition of having a holding company or a structure to manage our state-owned enterprises. I must say that no, it is not piecemeal implementation. It stands on its own. Reference to state capture, obviously, is about how the state capture report is going to enrich the process that we need to embark upon to reform our state-owned enterprises. And we firmly believe that through having this type of structure, we would be able to do so. If nothing else, what it will actually do is to ensure that there is universality and commonality about the management and the financial discipline across all our state-owned enterprises. And you do that much more effectively through a holding structure. And I can say that in other places, that's what they do. In Singapore, that's what they've succeeded in doing, in building Temasek. In China, COSAC is exactly what they have done, and in a number of other places. And some have done so through either their sovereign wealth funds and so forth in the way that they've structured things. But in this case, what we are seeking to do is to have uniformity of processes, which are better managed through a single structure. And all these companies will hang on that structure, will be subsidiaries. It will also help us, as I said, in one of the issues that I mentioned, in balance sheet management, where we will be able to have line of sight of what exactly is happening from a financial point of view in each of the state-owned enterprises, and synchronize what needs to be done from a performance point of view, a management point of view, and the objectives and the expectations will be so well set out that we will have one single view of exactly what is happening. And when the reporting comes in, it will be globular reporting, which enables us to see everything on one sheet of paper. Now, that is going to be the strength of what we are seeking to do. And of course, there'll be good cross-pollination of ideas, of processes. Transnet will know how PRASA is managing certain of their processes and initiatives, be they of an infrastructure nature, of a performance nature, of a market nature. They will get to know, and that cross-pollination you'll only truly be able to achieve, as Temasek has done in Singapore, where I visited and saw for myself. You'll only be able to do it through a structure like this. The other thing it will do, it will also lessen interference. One of the issues that has, been raised.
Honorable Member Kefale. Order mute. You may proceed, Mr.
Thank you, thank you. One of the things that has been raised by the council, the State-Owned Enterprise Council, is the issue of interference. Interference, yes, from the executives, because sometimes there is, the eagerness to get involved and interfere. But when we have a common state-owned structure, which has all these subsidiaries, we will then be able to have commonality of interest, commonality of processes, remuneration either of directors, of management, so that everything is well synchronized. And this, I think, will bring about a new era for our state-owned enterprises and will enable us and will strengthen our resolve in better managing our state-owned enterprises. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable CM Piri from the Chamber.
Ndiyalivhuwa mulangadzulo avantendele ndireshe vathoniphevi vari pano nduni ino ndi dovhe ndireshe na vadzulapo va South Africa kana va Afrika Tshipembe. Mulangadzulo nda ndi khou ṱoḓa u isa ndumeliso dzo khwaṱhaho kana dzavhuḓi kha muphuresidenthe singo ḽa Ramabulana ḽine ḽa ṱamela na vhavhulahi vhone vhaṋe vho Ramaphosa. Muhulwane vho dodombedza kana vho to zwi amba zwavhuḓi nga maanḓa uri haya mabindu a muvhuso one ane ndi one ane a khwaṱhisa ikonomi arali o manḓafhadziwa kana vhana ngori vho ḓi sumbedzisa na kha phindulo dzavho uri hu na program kana hu na maga o vheiwaho na a uri ri manḓafhadze ri khwinifhadze hedzi haya mabindu a muvhuso. Ri khou tenda ibile ri na lutendo na khazwo rine sa vhadzulapo vha South Africa kana rine sa miraḓo ya palamennde. Mbudziso yanga muhulwane ndi ya uri kha haya maṅwe mabindu ane a vha iḽi uri ndi ya muvhuso vha dovha futhi vha humbela kana vha tendela uri vha private vha ṱangane na muvhuso na mabindu a muvhuso ane ra ri ndi private public kana public private. Honeha ndi mbuno dzifhio dzavhuḓi dzine vha nga ri vhudza zwone uri zwi nga konesa uri zwi kone u manḓafhadza ikonomi yashu ya dovha hafhu ya dzudzanya zwavhuḓi ha mabindu a vha one o khwaṱhaho a shuma nga nḓila yo teaho. Ndo livhuwa mulise a.
Honorable the President.
Ndiyalivhuwa Madam Speaker, ndi dovhe ndi livhuwe na zwirendo zwe vha zwi vhea phanḓa. Ndi tama u khwaṱhisesa haya mafhungo a uri haya mabindu a muvhuso arali ra ṱanganyisa oṱhe a vha nga fhasi ha nnḓu nthihi naho a tshi ḓovha o ima nga milenzhe yawo one ane. Ndi zwone zwine zwa ḓo tou khwaṱhisa mishumo ya haya mabindu nahone ndi zwone zwine zwa ḓo ri thusa uri ikonomi ya hashu i bvelele phanḓa nga nḓila yo fanelaho. Vha khou vhea ḽipfhi ḽavhuḓi na mbudziso yavhuḓi ya uri kha haya maṅwe mabindu a private sector arali ra ṱanganyisela na public zwi nga to shumisa hani na ndi mabono afhio ane ra nga kona u vha nao. Ndi a takalela heyo mbudziso nga uri ri tshi sedza maṅwe mabindu a muvhuso ri vhona uri arali ra kona u dzhenisa vhaṅwe vha private sector
Honorable member, what's your problem? You may proceed, Mr. President.
The participation Hagi Western Tlekiri Harika Muso o ka kgona mo di company tsa yona mo tse ding e seng kaofela mo tse ding a re ka kgona gore re sebedisane le ba private sector re ka fumana gore ke ntho e ka re thusang mo tse ding. For instance, anke ke be example entle, you know, Telkom used to be wholly owned by government, and then it was, we brought in the private sector. We still own a fairly big share, about 40-something%. But then what we also did with Telkom is that it was listed on the stock exchange. And Telkom is one of those top performing companies listed on the stock exchange, pays a dividend to government every year. on a continuous basis is well managed. And the strength of that has been Telkom, having been a publicly owned entity, having now been listed, has been catapulted to another level of governance, of management, and of performance management as well, by bringing in other shareholders. The same thing has happened to a number of companies in China. And I've said in this house before, China Mobile, which has easily 700 million members, subscribers, is listed on this New York Stock Exchange. Through that listing, they were able to raise a lot of capital that has fueled the growth of China Mobile, which did not require a lot of fiscal support from the government. And they've done the same thing with the ICBC, which is the largest bank in the world, and all that. Now, that is the strength of bringing in participation without losing control. And they have done that without the loss of control. Today, what we are seeking to do is, with our own SAA, having really run into enormous challenges and problems. What are we doing? We're saying we will bring in a private sector player who will come and put in their money and inject life into SAA. And in that way, I find that some of our state-owned enterprises can reach a level of good performance, because by so doing, one, we are not privatizing, we're just bringing in partners. And the partners who are going to add a lot of strength, a lot of capability, and through the partnership will be able to do a very good cross-pollination of ideas and of systems, of governance, and financial and otherwise. But also it gives us a really good standing. I often say that, when Eskom was in its heyday, that is the entity that we could have listed. Could have listed the debt burden that Eskom has, would have been easily dealt with. And but anyway, that is history. Now we have to manage it out of where it is, and we will make all efforts. Ngazwezo ndikotenderana nabo uri huna zwithu zivhuya rine ngazviwana arali uchikoshumisana state-owned enterprises nava boramabindu bane vavaka private. The key issue is just to manage that whole process, to manage it in a way where your state-owned enterprises still serve the public good and still focuses on the developmental mandate, because that is an important one, to ensure that the services or whatever products that it produces are still able to reach the poorest of the poor in our country through the developmental mandate it should have. So it is doable. It is something that we can move towards, and through this state-owned enterprise council, we should be able to reach that level. Thank you very much.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much. And Mr. President, I'm very glad that you mentioned Eskom, because we're now in our 15th year of load shedding in South Africa. Yes, sir. In 2015, you said, and I quote, "In another 18 months to 2 years, you'll forget the challenges with power and energy in Eskom ever happened," unquote. Now, last week, we got hit with stage 4 with the potential of stage 6. Electricity has gone up by an astronomical 450% in the last 10 years. It's killing jobs and it's killing the economy. All of these increases are to cover for your poverty cabinet's incompetence and corruption, all to make up for government's lack of accountability. People are not paying for more expensive electricity, they're paying for your poverty cabinet. Electricity price increases come directly out of the back pockets of ordinary household income. How can you justify choosing price increases for people over accountability for your poverty cabinet? Thank you.
The Honorable, the President.
Now, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Steenhuisen raises a very important question about the electricity price increase that we saw introduced. Now, as he well knows, electricity prices are regulated by NERSA, which is an independent agency which we put in place. Obviously, ESCOM, looking at its own budgeting, will say this is the price increase with desire. And quite often they peg it at a high level and NERSA brings it down, and there are interventions and discussions that happen to bring it where it is. Now, ESCOM faces its own special problems, more special than maybe sometimes we imagine. I did say in this House, in State of the Nation, I said, the deficit we have is 4,000 megawatts. That's the deficit we have to ensure that the availability factor of our energy is at a level where even if some of the power stations trip and break, we still have that cushion. We no longer have that cushion. So when these old power stations, the generators trip and break and some don't come on stream as well as we wanted, particularly Medupi and Kusile, which we spent enormous amounts of money on. When that happens, in the end, the deficit is still there and we still have that shortage. And that is what gives rise to the load shedding. And as I said, it's not like we're sitting and doing nothing. We have taken steps and measures and initiatives to ensure that we do have alternative power. And through the various windows that we've put in place, and we're going to another bid window, we have allowed up to self-generation of power up to 100 megawatts, and all that is in the works. All that is going to come through. And various investors, various manufacturers of equipment are now, in a race to make sure that we get there. And we had thought that we would also get emergency power, but then again, we are caught up by our own regulations. The environmental impact assessment decreased something else. I traveled last year in December to Cote d'Ivoire as well as Ghana. They have exactly the same. They were running short of 2,000 megawatts or so. They brought in emergency power, and that enables their economies. Of course, they are not at the same level as we are, but that enables their economies to have sufficient power to be able to help them as they are building up their own more permanent power. In our case, that has been put to a stop, and one had thought that we would be able to get the deficit 4,000 megawatts through that. Now we didn't. Now going forward, obviously, we want cheap energy, all of us, and the renewables are going to be able to give us cheap energy. And the initial bid windows were very expensive. The latter ones have become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So I see the era of cheaper energy coming. I agree with you completely that the 400% energy price rise in the last 10 years is something that has really dealt a blow to our economy. We used to have the cheapest energy in the world, and that is why we were able to set up smelters both in Mozambique and in our own country. But those days are long gone now. We now surviving on a day-to-day basis with very minimal energy that is generated here. We are solving the problem. We are addressing it. And I've said this before, it is not the deliberateness or the intention of ESCOM to be embarking on load shedding. It is how they manage the system. It is a very complex system, very delicate, that one company holds the energy fortunes of the country in its hands. And once one power station trips, it immediately affects the entire system. Now, with the diversification that we've embarked upon of getting independent power producers, but also the diversification that ESCOM itself has opted for to go into renewables, we are going to see a new era of energy generation in our country coming to the fore. No, I didn't say that in 2015, or did I? Yes, I could have. Yeah, you were listening. In 2015, we were hopeful, we were truly hopeful that our energy challenges would lessen, but they've gotten worse. But at the same time, we have become a lot better in bringing in renewable energy. The sun, the wind is generating quite a lot of energy into the grid on an ongoing basis as we move forward. So we could have been much worse off than where we are, but energy construction takes time, and we need to allow this process to ensue. And I am hopeful and positively hopeful that we are going to see better days when it comes to our energy generation. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable NLS Ngwakwa.
Speaker, thank you very much. President, I think there's a slightly more strategic question to consider here with respect to this question on SOEs. You've given the tendency of the economic superpowers around the world to either ignore international dispute resolution mechanisms or to completely bypass them and decide to resolve disputes through violence or wars. Does that not increase that which naturally increases the propensity around the world for member states to use violence to resolve disputes? And when you consider that one of our SOEs, BNL, for an example, is on the brink of collapse, and that SOE impacts negatively, its state impacts negatively on the ability of the South African National Defence Force to discharge its constitutional mandate. One, what would you do to try and resolve that? Secondly, which is also related to the matter of SOEs, is while the development of a framework governing SOEs is critical and important for their sustainability, but government should also be talking about how those SOEs are going to use to mitigate the effects and the impact of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine on the South African economy. So what are you going to do, say, about those two related to SOEs? Thank you.
The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And no, not in the field. Honorable Speaker, the pointed question, for instance, of entities such as DINEL, which at the current moment are going through a very difficult, almost an impossible period, is that we do obviously need to breathe life into them and to show up their balance sheet. DINEL is a government entity that has a lot of potential, so much potential that the market is just wide open for DINEL. And what it really needs is to be given, yes, that leg up, that support, so that it goes back to its glory days. Many countries on the African continent keep coming to us and saying, we've looked at the products that DINEL produces, from vehicles to missiles to whatever, to be the Roy Falk as well and all that. And we actually want to buy our products from a DINEL. Would DINEL be able to deliver? Now, DINEL has run into a financial problem and a financial challenge which we are looking at. Denel would also help us in the times that we live in like now. Our SANDF is very reliant on Denel. Most of the equipment that they have were made by Denel. So therefore, the twinning between SANDF and Denel is very, very critical from a procurement point of view and from a supply point of view. So Denel needs to be propped up, it needs to be assisted, and once it is, and it is properly run under this system or the structure that we've talked about, it will be much better placed to be able to fulfill its objectives. Now, we've also been receiving approaches, I must say, about partnering with other players, where other players say, we know the challenges that Denel is going through, we would be able to give balance sheet support, we would like to find out if you as South Africa would be willing to partner us at an equity level and what have you. Now, these are matters that we're giving consideration to look at the costs and the benefit of precisely that type of option. In the broader geopolitics of the world, you do need, as an industrialized country that we are, you do need a Denel that would be able to build, manufacture the type of equipment that is needed in this day and age, given, as you say, the propensity of a number of powers in the world to resort to violence rather than to resolve problems through negotiation. So Denel is a great asset for us to have at the state-owned enterprise level. And I would like to see Denel getting back on its feet rather than remain in the doldrums where it is, and also participate more actively and profitably as a keen pillar of our SANDF. So I think we can get there. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
The last question has been asked by the Honorable P.J. Groenewald. The Honorable, the President.
Honorable Speaker, the appointment of the National Commissioner of South African Police Service is governed by Section 207, subsection 1 of the Constitution, which says, which I'm sure Honorable Groenewald is well aware of, the President as head of the National Executive must appoint a woman or a man as the National Commissioner of the Police Service to control and to manage the police service. That's what the Constitution says. While this places sole responsibility for the appointment of the National Commissioner in the hands of the President, it does not preclude the President from putting in place a process to seek recommendations and proposals. This is the approach that I took with respect to the appointment of the National Director of Public Prosecutions and to the identification of potential candidates for the position of Chief Justice. In each case, the approach that I took was informed by the specific circumstances and the nature of the position. These considerations will continue to inform me on the approach that I take with respect to the appointment of the next South African Police Service National Commissioner. So they will help to inform me. But in the end, the Constitution is clear who appoints and how that appointment will be done. So as you've come to know me and to criticize me at times, I will embark on a process. And you are suggesting panel of experts and all that, and I will inaugurate a process which will lead us to, or me, to finally appointing a national commissioner. Thank you.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable PJ Groenewald.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable President, I welcome your commitment to follow a process. It is part of the National Development Program, the NDP, where you were the deputy chairperson. And in that NDP, and if I can quote, it says clearly, if you want a professional and an effective police service, then it states the following, and I quote, the National Commissioner of Police and deputies should be appointed by the President on a competitive basis. A selection panel established by the President should select and interview candidates for these posts against objective criteria. The President should appoint the National Commissioner and deputies from recommendations and reports received from this selection panel. So thank you, Honourable President. I hope you will follow that, a panel of experts making recommendations, because, Honourable President, part of the problem in crime in South Africa, that since 2000 and up to 2017, South Africa had national commissioners that know nothing about police. We started with Jackie Selebi, a diplomat. He ended in jail, and he found out that you cannot fight criminals with diplomacy. Becky Tsele, who was a politician, and then Ria Pihega, a social worker. They've disbanded specialized units because they didn't understand the operational requirements to ensure an effective police service. My follow-up, Honourable President, is how soon will that happen? What is the time frame? Because I can also say to you, to have an acting commissioner is also not creating a conducive situation for effectively fighting crime. I thank you.
Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'd like to thank Honourable Groenewald for his thoughts and his views, as well as, I would say, maybe suggestions, which are really not suggestions because they are encapsulated in the National Development Plan. So, good reminder, good hope, because that's exactly what you said. It's a wonderful hope, and it's being done. It's going to happen in a process that I've outlined here. So rest assured, a process will be followed, and we will make sure that it is done on a competitive basis as set out in the NDP. And it will be people who are well steeped in the craft of policing. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable A.M. Siabi from the Chamber.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. And thanks very much, President. I want to join Honourable Groenewald in welcoming the commitment from the President in following a process without disregarding the prerogative of the President to appoint as enshrined in the Constitution. Having said that, Honourable President, what practical plans or measures are so far undertaken to implement the recommendations of the report of the panel of experts in strengthening the security cluster? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Ms. Silema Loma, Honourable Member. Mute, Honourable Member. The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, processes are underway to implement the the recommendations of the panel, which we have taken very seriously in all its ramifications. We are involved in the process of ensuring that we strengthen the security complex in our country in all aspects, from people to processes to institutions, and all that is being addressed to make sure that the security system and cluster is properly strengthened, particularly in the light of what the panel has recommended in its clear recommendations. The National Security Council has met a few times to look at precisely these recommendations, and those recommendations are now in the process of being implemented. And a part of what we are doing now, the appointment of people, is precisely that, and to ensure that there will be good cooperation between the executive as well as the functionaries in the form of, say, for instance, the minister who looks after oversight, and also those who are more operational, like, say, the directors general, the commissioners, and all that. So we're looking at the full ramification of the security cluster and beginning the process. And it's a reform process informed by a clear strategy that needs to be put in place. Thank you very much.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, last week a report came out about South Africa's social instability. The report said that your party's internal faction fighting posed the single biggest risk to political instability and conflict in South Africa today. So I think you've been warned. And believe you me, what happened in KwaZulu-Natal last year could happen again at any time, especially with fuel, electricity, and food prices doubling the increase in social grants. With South Africa's inequality as well, in another report shown this week to be the highest in the world. Our country is literally dry tinder, and it's just waiting for a spark. Mr. President, when are you going to put the country ahead of your party? You used taxpayer money to buy out a useless police commissioner. When are you going to use your presidential power to get rid of your useless police minister? And before you say opinion, it's not opinion. Zondo report, crime statistics, gender-based violence statistics. Our women and children and our citizens live in fear every day. When are you going to give us a police minister that's going to inspire confidence and keep us safe? Thank you.
Yes. Honorable the President.
Just before the President responds, is it parliamentary for a member of parliament to call another member useless? Because it was ruled before that it was unparliamentary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Khatebe. I'll look into the matter and I'll be advised accordingly. Thank you very much. You may proceed, Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I hear what Honorable Steen Hayes is saying, and clearly, sorry, it's my iPad. I think Honorable Steen Hayes has a private wish. His private wish is that he would like to be president and appoint ministers. And I have to say that, yeah, I have to say that that wish is not evident now and might never be. Yes. So the process of appointing ministers and deputy ministers is the president's prerogative, and I think it's best left there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Zet Majosi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable President, as you have said and outlined that there will be a process that you will be undertaken for you to then appoint the National Commissioner, can the President then take us into confidence that maybe this time in the process that will be undertaken, there will be transparency to the public as well, so that they know that the person that will be elected is a person that they will feel safe with and will also have a hope that South Africa will be led forward. And we should all be able to agree that our security cluster must be professionalized to the highest degree possible, which includes the process of achieving honest, ethical, competent police service, which is completely free of political manipulation and control. Up until now, this has been nothing more than a pipe dream. How do we intend reversing the tide in this area and ensuring that only competent career security professionals are appointed to these positions? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable the President.
Well, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I have said that I am going to embark on a process for the appointment of the next National Commissioner of Police, and that process is a process that in the end will yield the type of results that will be positive, will be able to take the police service forward. Now, we will be processing this matter, and we will process it in a way that will actually take us to a good end. And I'd like to thank Honorable Groenewald and other members who have asked this question, because I take it that you asked this question out of great concern, and you ask it in line with what is set out in the National Development Plan, and I see it in positive light. And I'd like to thank you for raising it in the way that you have, and it does show that you too have the interests of the country at heart, as I do. So we will move forward and we will act on the various matters that we need to work on to ensure that the next National Police Commissioner is a fit and proper person who will be able to manage our police and lead our police in the most effective way. Thank you very much.
That concludes the questions to the President. I thank the Honorable the President. Honorable members, that concludes the business of the day. The House is adjourned.
Long live the President. Long